Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser, and today we have a special guest with us, Pablo Galarza. He is a small business owner, and he is going to talk to us about some of the things that he deals with as a small business owner with leadership specifically. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I'm Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, and as I have promised in previous episodes, we have a special guest with us today. His name is Pablo Galarza. He is the owner of FC and Sons Construction, based out of New Jersey. He currently does residential and commercial remodels and additions, and he runs his own company. Right now, he has about 5 employees that he's in charge of, and he is dealing with everything that every small business owner has to deal with in America right now when he is in charge of other people's welfare, especially as employees. So, Pablo, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Kale, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me here, man. It's a pleasure being here, man. It's great. Thanks, man.
You bet. I've been looking forward to this since we've got this booked because you are essentially who my target audience is for my podcast, because I want to talk about leadership in the small business world and some of the struggles and things that you deal with. Recently, my series has been focusing on morale in the workplace and as part of an organization and how important that is, both what things that leaders in small business do to kill morale, but also things that they do purposely to raise morale and make sure that happens. Can you take a little bit and discuss, what does morale look like in your world as part of the construction world? Kind of maybe give us a little bit of background on your company. What kind of structure you're running? Are they all remote workers? Is it all family? Like, what are we looking at? And then how does the concept of morale in your workplace fit in?
Yeah, man. So, we are a family-owned business. My parents started back in 2011. So 4 years ago, I jumped in. I was like, you know what? Let me help them expand. And the morale comes through working with the family. And most of the subcontractors we have, they're family members as well. We have some employees that I've known for a very long time. So there's a lot of loyalty that goes with our company. And just keeping everybody together and working with each other, it's actually a big morale booster because we all could trust each other that we're all going towards the same mission and being aligned. It's literally helped us big time. And the biggest morale booster I could say is when we actually start a project and we see the end product. So we come into a house that's completely destroyed. And at the very end, you with the client's like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys did this and that. And it's, it just makes you feel good because other than you just working, doing it for, as a business, there's also this internal feeling that you feel when you see clients, are happy to see a new home and they're walking into something that they're going to build now new memories with their families, with their friends, their kids. And for them, it's a big investment, renovating a home, doing a basement, you're looking anything from 20 to 150,000, depending on what type of work you're trying to do. So they're paying big bucks for that. So at first they're worried, but once, you give them the nice product with good quality, they're very happy. So that's definitely, I think, one of the big morals. The other little morals that we do is any little thing that we do. So we systemize the company as much as we can. We're still trying to improve, but we have step by step. Permits got approved. You guys got the permits approved, So next step, let's go. So it's like you're happy because now you're checking off things. So you're like as you build, especially when we're running multiple projects, we need to have a checklist of everything that got completed. Else we'll forget and we'll go crazy. So as we complete different check marks, we're like, all right, it's a booster on us because Katerina finished that. Oh, Daniel finished that. Oh, Pablo did that. Yo, guys, we're doing great, And sometimes if someone's down, but the other one sees that they actually did something good, they're like, all right, it's still a booster as if we're all working together. Right. So celebrating the little ones.
So this is really fascinating because this is something I have not touched on at all, really, in my podcast. And there's 2 things I want to touch on with that. One is you work with family a lot, right? So I haven't discussed much of the dynamics of that, of what it's like working with that, because that brings in essentially your entire childhood history into the equation, right? And you've got all that, whether it be with aunts and uncles or anything, you just deal with a lot of those dynamics. And then the second thing that you mentioned was a big booster to the overall morale and keeping that up is celebrating small wins. If that was kind of what I heard you saying,
Yeah,
and I can imagine getting a permit approved, especially depending on the scale of the project, is no small win. So can you touch on those two things? One, the family dynamics, and I'm not asking you by any stretch to, air family laundry by any imagination, but like what are some of those dynamics that you've run into, and maybe both on the positive and negative of how that affects your small business? And then also expand a little bit on, those small wins and what that does to help and what that looks like.
Yeah, man. On the family part, it tends to be a little complicated, but sometimes it makes things a lot easier. So in the beginning, there was like miscommunication, the correct word, where
Right.
you're kind of following the family role. So my parents started
Okay.
it, and there's certain things I knew, and there's certain things they knew, and there's certain things other people knew. But at the same time, sometimes as parents, they tried leading you, and there's older people try leading you, but at the same time, sometimes as a young blood, you come in with new ideas, new things. So eventually it took a bit of communicating, and that's where clear communication, putting targets in front, comes in place. Because working together with a family could be really good, or it could be very bad. I've seen scenarios where people are working with their families and eventually they don't click together, and next thing you know, they're mad at each other during family dinners. So one thing I've learned from my dad, which is very strong, was business is business, family is family. We argued for doing a business an event, whatever we're trying to do, things don't work out. At the dinner, we forgot what even happened. We're a family. So,
Okay.
and that's actually one thing at GrowthCon at the business seminar where we were, and Elena mentioned Grant is the head. I'm underneath him. Although we're together in marriage, here he makes the decisions. He's on top, and I'm here. I'm right after him. He makes a decision. I gotta prove that. I gotta follow up. And it's kind of very same concept on a lot smaller scale, where when someone does a decision, so we all have some separate roles, where I make the main decisions of the company. So now they're like, all right, he's doing it for the good of the company. It's not like I'm trying to make a decision for the worst. So now they tend to allow me to make more decisions than in the beginning, because now they're trying to see, all right, his main mission is to grow the company, to grow for the better of all of us. So it's, I guess, that clear understanding, and never mixing business with family, because there's sometimes things that happen in business and you just keep as business and you just move on forward, and that's how you could grow if you're able to separate those feelings.
That's great. Yeah. And I would imagine that certainly you have these high hopes going into it, but then when reality hits and you run into those, you realize that you do things different. Even though you are your mother's child and your father's child, you're still your own human being, and you have things that you want to do, and wanting to put that your own personal stamp on it. And if I may ask, you're a young man. What made you want to take over this business versus maybe starting your own or going, working for another company? What made you want to do that?
So what made me do that was I didn't have such a good experience in the beginning with business. I actually, as soon as I graduated while I was in college, started working for a company in the city, where the company started with 4 workers. And I joined the company as a worker, eventually climbed the ladder super quick over the 4 years I was in college, eventually became, a worker, foreman, manager, estimator, all the way when I became the right hand of the owner, where I was promised a dream, right? And all those 4 years, I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave, start my own company, this and that. And here we're growing a company from 4 employees to the moment I left to 50 something employees, right? And basically I agreed with them. Most of the hires were mine. And we're working, my goal was to build his company. Let's do it, let's do that. But I was building somebody else's company. And when I asked for it, if I could have a share, if I could have something, even bonuses, I was on salary. So it just didn't go well.
Right.
But I'm blessed for the opportunity to be there, because the amount of things I've learned, from systems to softwares to how to build my business, how to talk to different people, because there's all different types of people that you gotta interact. And it made a lot of friends through that. Over 50 employees that we had, which means there was a lot of interaction with different type of characters of people. And I feel like that made me a better leader. Talk to different people, see how people act and react to different things. And yeah, I've made tons of mistakes talking to certain people, because I didn't know, it was that many people with different qualities, which is good for a company. You just gotta make sure you use their best to different things. And as a manager, a brand new manager, I wasn't, aware of that. So all that made me, a better manager now, better leader, better person, all those experiences, although they weren't the best experiences, but it made the person I am today. So then at that point when things weren't working out, so I was like, all right, it's time for me to move on. Do I start something new? Do I go work for somebody else? Or I saw my parents, working on this business, which was going good for, at that point, I think it was 8, 9 years. I was like,
Yeah.
they started something. Why start something new when it's going well? They're profitable. If I come in with this experience on the commercial world and with a lot of connections, we could blow it up. And then that's what we started doing. Little by little, started going in there. And I'm like, all right, we need more employees, because I was so used to having employees. So then I'm like, wait, but like, how am I going to hire people now? Like, it was just like, there's this like fear that you have inside, like, oh, am I going to be able to pay them now? And it's just like this thing. But eventually, you start just killing the fear and just going forward, hiring that person, and it makes the difference. If you're hiring the right person, if you qualify them and they're right for the job, they're going to make a difference for you. And that's what's happened. Yeah, man, that was my little story, how I transitioned into choosing my family, and leaving that job that I had.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I want to say, that's a big kudos to your folks for, they made it past that initial like 5-year failure point. That's not easy to do. So that's fantastic. Just from that tidbit.
Mind you, my parents, when they started the business, they had no business. They had no business background. They didn't even graduate from high school. They they started this business with no knowledge of anything about business, finances, and none of that. And yet they were still managed to keep that business open and profitable and well known, because I'm telling you, the recommendations that come in just through my dad's work, it's insane. It's great. So it's like, I'm like, wow, like you guys really did all of this without any type of knowledge at all. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
no MBA, no Harvard. Yeah, that is awesome.
None of that.
Now you mentioned something kind of in passing in the middle of your story about being a better manager and leader. Talk to me a little bit about how you see, are those two different roles? Is that one and the same? Are they this, what is your definition of manager versus leader, and vice versa in business?
I mean, they could be the same. You always need a manager, but a manager could be a leader, right? So a leader is someone that basically doesn't just throw something out there like, hey, I need you to get this done, and then just walks away and the person is clueless. A good leader shows them how it's done, and if they don't know how to do it, they find someone competent to show them how it's done, so you could accomplish those goals. Because I've seen managers where, I've experienced that too while I was working there. We had some managers where they would just tell employee, hey, listen, we need to get this work done, and have it done by in 2 days. And the guy has no track of how to follow that. He has no rails how to get to that point. All he has is a direction, and one, you're losing productivity. It's the wrong way to go about it. If the manager himself doesn't know how to do that, have somebody come and show them, hey, listen, this is the steps how to get to that point from A to C. I think that makes a good leader, when you show and they follow. And a manager, you always need a manager. You always need someone managing over different aspects of things, because once you're focused on a certain task, you could be doing that task, but sometimes you as just an employee could get lost on that. If you have a manager, he'll be making sure we're all reaching all our KPIs and we're achieving our goals. Because if you're just as a person just doing one task and focus on that because that's your main thing, that's your main trade, if you're just doing whatever it is that you're focused on, you're going to focus just on that, but then sometimes you forget about what you're doing. It's like a business owner. Sometimes they're working in the business, not on the business, right? If they're working in the business, they're more working as an employee. If they're working on the business, working more as a manager, managing, trying to make the company scale. So I think that's the difference. But a manager should be a leader.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and I wholeheartedly agree. Right, that's the ideal. Is you can have a leader that's not a very good manager. Absolutely, right? Because they see themselves as the big picture type of person, or the one that's good at hiring people or finding the right people for the job, or a good salesman, right? Or getting the name of the company out there, and vice versa. You can have a manager that's a horrible leader, but they're like a phenomenal scheduler or phenomenal finance manager, that type of stuff, but they just don't have those what we would consider like classical leadership qualities. That's really fascinating. I thank you so much for that kind of explanation, and I'm glad to hear that you as small business owner of America thinks similarly to how I do, and what my concept of that is. And that's what I'm kind of with this podcast trying to educate people, is that they are not one and the same all the time, definitely. But ideally, that's what you want it to be. Well, this is fantastic. To my listeners, I hope you are, definitely go back and re-listen to this episode, because Pablo has dropped some amazing, just little gold nuggets throughout in talking about, his journey, the lessons that he learned, and then just his thoughts on leadership, and how he views that in his workplace, and as being the responsible party for these others employees, of which are family, which is no small thing. There's a lot of dynamics that go into that. So Pablo, as we wrap up here, I want to give you a chance. How do people reach you? How do they reach out to you if they want to? What's the best way to contact you? And do you have any last things you want to say that are on your mind?
No, I mean, I do want to say one thing for the listeners. You got to embrace change, man. That's one thing that's been killing a lot of people. And I feel like that's one thing that killed where my last business I was working with. They weren't willing to change. They weren't willing to update. They weren't willing to get new softwares. They weren't willing to grow as a business. To grow as a business, you gotta embrace change, because everything is ever changing. You just gotta make sure you embrace change, and that's gonna bring you to new levels.
That's awesome. And then how do people get a hold of you if they want to?
Man. So they could reach me directly to my Instagram, which is very simple, 3 letters, PAB_. That's my Instagram hashtag. And then anyone that wants to reach me and follow my Instagram from my company page is FCANDSONS. That's my Instagram hashtag.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, once they could contact me through there, and my CRM will take care from there on. Perfect. So you guys, if you missed that and you don't want to rewind, it'll be in the description of this episode with a direct link to Pablo's Instagram, both his company and personal. Definitely reach out to him. Certainly if you want to hire him. It sounds like a phenomenal reputation they've got running up there in New Jersey. So again, Pablo, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate getting the pleasure and honor to speak with you today and hear your perspective on leadership in the business. So again, thank you. Thanks, Kale. Thanks for doing all this. There's a lot of people to learn from you. Yep. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Pablo and I today. No matter where you're at in the world, hey, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.